the Big 12's biggest mistake was a conference championship game. Could have been selling the fact that they were the only conference where all teams play everybody in their conference and the one true champion, but you would still have a conference championship game to have that.
No, they tried to do that. That was one true champion.
No, but have a conference championship game the same year. When they
is he saying that it was a mistake to have one?
No, they didn't have one. Remember,
that was 14, a mistake. Yeah, of course it was a mistake.
Well, that's why they changed it.
Yeah,
that's why they changed it. I thought he said it was a mistake to not have one. Like, no, it was a huge
that's the
mistake.
debate too, though. You can have we could do a whole hour on whether the conference championship games are better or worse for certain conferences. That was a whole SEC thing in the '90s. It was really building up the conference title game. Like, people act like those. Like, when you were growing up in the '70s and '80s, were conference title games that big of a deal?
There
weren't any.
Right, exactly.
No, there weren't any.
But would you think that, based on the way we talk about them these days, you would think that they were an institution, right?
Oh, no.
That we've always had conference championship games.
Was the SEC the first to do that? Were they the first to do that?
Yeah. And then they built it up and they marketed it to to what it became. And that was not even when they were really at the height of their powers. That was a good decade before, really. But that's what I'm saying is, we think now, like, how could you not play a conference championship game? And it's like that's not even really a thing beyond the last 30 years, quite frankly. But it feels like it's always been a thing.
Can you imagine in the days of the Big Eight, with Nebraska and Oklahoma every year fighting for 1 and 2, and on occasion there was other schools that would also jump up and be a part of that. But like in 1971, you have the game of the century, 35-31. The winner goes to play in the Orange Bowl for the national title. And that year, the Big 12 had the number 1, 2, and 3 teams in the country after the bowl games. 1, 2, and 3, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Colorado. And they did not have a conference championship game. Can you imagine winning the game of the century, which we hear that even to this day, and then turning around the next week and having played Nebraska, Oklahoma again?
Yep.
Back Ohio State, Michigan again? Yeah. Of course, there were independents back then as well. Independent teams like Notre Dame and Penn State, Florida State,
you can, though,
among some others.
Just in the Big 12 history, though, you can point out to where it's helped and where it's hurt. It definitely hurt TCU. Like, I wonder what would have happened to TCU Baylor year. That would have been really interesting if they would have had to have gone and played a conference championship game.
Well, that was the data point that they were discussing that they both missed, and so that would have been, and they would have come up with something else.
But then you were told after, well, then there was the Texas-Colorado example of where you really got screwed by having a championship game. You lost a potential national champion appearance because of the conference. So, like, it goes both ways. I mean, and it has in the Big 12's short history. It's gone both ways multiple times. But yeah, that's a creation of the last 30 years that's become quite the quizzical point as far as, like, is it good or bad, or how much does it harm, help, and I think for the Big 12 it's been a mixed bag mostly.
Well, from the first year, Texas, which then sent a message by winning that game, and beating what was the defending national champions back-to-back years, and beat them right. Great game, but they won. That cost Nebraska a chance to play in the national championship game. And Osborne's the one that mentioned that it would probably hurt more than help. And if you're a coach, you probably don't want to play that extra game. But if you're the commissioner, AD, and presidents, you want the cash.
Yeah, and look,
you just said it. You want the what? You want the cash, and that's what. That's why everybody's got one now.
Kansas State beat Oklahoma one year and knocked them. I think
Colorado beat Texas.
Yeah.
Well, and if you want a roadmap on how to long-term blow up your conference the day it starts, just start from 1996 in the Big 12. I mean, they made every time they were at a fork in the road and we could do this, they're like, oh, let's go down Dumb Street. Let's go down that one, because they just kept, like, every time it was like, good idea, bad idea. Like, oh, but the bad idea looks fun.
Here we go.
Let's go do that.
And I know we got to run here, but 96, number 3 Nebraska loses by 10 to unranked Texas. 98, number 2 K-State loses by a field goal to number 10 A&M. You had, they won there.
Can you imagine if Kansas State might have won it that year?
Number 3 Texas in 01 loses to number 9 Colorado. And
03
number 1 Oklahoma 03. They still got in, though, and then they lost to LSU, and then that kick-started the whole SEC barrage, even though LSU won that game in New Orleans, and then USC beat the dog mess out of Oklahoma the following year.
That launched the SEC.
No, that launched USC.
Well, yeah.
The USC mini dynasty, which then faded into the full-blown SEC with a sprinkling of Ohio State and Clemson the last 20 years.
Texas
But,
ended
yeah.
that USC dynasty too.
Exactly. So that was 03. I'm trying to think if there was any other major ones. A couple tail kickings by number 2 Oklahoma and number 2 Texas. I think that was kind of the highlights as far as those go. But that happened a lot early on. It definitely happened, 3-4 times in that first 5-6 years of the Big 12 championship game.
All right, in the 4 o'clock hour, Max